Welcome to Big Blend Radio with your hosts, Lisa and Nancy, editors of BigBlendMagazine.com.
Hey everybody, welcome to Big Blend Radio's second Saturday Sunshine Stage Show with the Palm Springs Preferred Small Hotels. This is an awesome group of independently owned boutique hotels in the desert resort community of Palm Springs in sunny Southern California. And you can go to the website, go to authenticpalmsprings.com. Today, we're going to focus on the mid-century modern architecture of this amazing city, which does feel like a small town, actually, but it is a city. From what I have heard, and I don't know anything, but Palm Springs has one of the largest concentrations of preserved mid-century modern architecture in the world. And we're going to find out more with our guest today. And so I'm going to bring Michael Green on the show first. He's been, I think this is his third time, I think. He's the general manager of the Palm Springs Cultural Center, chair of the Palm Springs Preferred Small Hotels, and he is also co-owner of the Triangle Inn in Palm Springs. So you can go to his website, triangle-in.com. So I'm dashing in, Michael. How are you? And welcome back.
Doing very well. Thank you.
So now I believe that your inn is mid-century modernism, right?
It is. Our hotel was actually designed by Hugh Captor, who is one of the youngest or younger mid-century modern architects, still with us. And still running around Palm Springs in his cowboy hat and his cowboy boots. So
we like that.
When our hotel was built, it was called the Impala Lodge in 1958.
So when we talk about the Palm Springs Preferred Small Hotel Group, how many hotels are in the group? And then are a lot of them mid-century modern I'll get there.
We vary. It runs between about 77 and 80 hotels, depending on where we are at the moment and what the hotels are up to. But as you know, there were a couple of phases of building in Palm Springs. One phase was in the 30s, and the second one really started in the late 40s and ran through the 50s. And that's when many of our hotels were built. So even the ones that may not have a celebrity architect, still many of them were built at that time and reflect that kind of architecture, which of course is glass, stone, and steel in many cases.
Right. I'm very clean cut, but it still has a cool vibe to it. You know what I mean? It's a classic. You got to go check it out. So I want to bring our next guest on the show, Kathy Condon. She is a journalist, a travel writer, and she's traveled all over the world. She is a contributor to Boutiquely Palm Springs. So you can find out more about that if you go to authenticpalmsprings.com and read her stories there. And she's also written about mid-century modernism in Palm Springs, but she also knows everything that's going on in Palm Springs. She knows all the gossip. So go to palmspringsinsiderguide.com. So welcome, Kathy. How are you?
Thank you very much, Lisa. Happy to be here. And I now proudly can say I'm a 10-year resident, full-time resident of Palm Springs. So I've been learning lots about this community, that's for sure.
What is your favorite part about living there and then also writing about it? Because is it the gossip? Do you really get all the gossip?
Actually, I have to admit, because I'm traveling quite a bit, it's not so much the gossip, it's about what kind of attractions we have around here that people normally miss when they come here. And actually, that's why I decided to start the Palm Springs Insider Guide, because I was so frustrated that people really thought all we had were pools and sitting around with your umbrella drinks and golf, whereas there is so much to do, kind of little hidden gems. And now writing for the Preferred Small Hotels is pretty amazing what I am discovering more and more about the history. And I'm fortunate to know some of the people who were connected when, in 1947 when Palm Springs came. So I have a chance to learn a lot about the history. But my main goal is having a place where people can come to the Palm Springs Insider Guide and learn what else there is to do. For example, it's just amazing, some of the places that exist. And even the Cabot Lodge, Cabot Museum is a 20-minute ride from Palm Springs and a great little attraction that people are not going to.
When you're writing and getting all these stories, and something Nancy and I find as we travel the country, full time, especially going, we really do focus on staying in bed and breakfast and independent hotels as much as we can. One thing we've discovered, and I'm sure it's the same in Palm Springs for you, and as a travel writer, as you travel the country and the world, each inn has its own fascinating history. And I think that's something we don't really see in like museums or anything like that, but going there, and I think that's something so special about these inns, these independent inns, and that they're kind of, you're staying in a museum, but it's not, your grandma's dusty museum with doilies.
Well, that's absolutely true. And interviewing the owners of these hotels is fascinating, because why did they get there? Why did they decide to remodel it? And what does the future look like? And frankly, we talk a lot about how did you get through the pandemic and what saved you. But there is no question, each one of these small hotels has a different personality. And so that's why we love to send people to the AuthenticPalmSprings.com website, because they can indeed find a small hotel that fits their personality or what they're looking for. I just had friends from Vancouver, Washington come down and get in touch with me, and they said, okay, we want to find the real Palm Springs 60s vibe. Where would we go? And so, one of the first came to mind was the Cole, and they went there and they just laughed and they said, oh my gosh, you were so right. It's exactly what we were looking for. And still others want to have nice, quiet, Zen-like places. Those exist. So the variety of the small hotels, really people coming to Palm Springs really need to go to the website to really explore and find out, what are they looking for? Are they looking for a pool in the middle with one level all the way around? It's amazing, the different kinds of varieties. And I love the creativity of the people who are restoring the hotels.
Yeah, I think it's such an important role that they're playing. Our next guest is Kurt Sear. He's a local celebrity from what I've heard. He's also a designer and a mid-century modern expert, and he takes tours. So you can go to psmodsquad.com. So that's Palm Springs Mod Squad. So you can go on a tour with him. So welcome, Kurt. How are you?
Thank you. Great to be here.
So you're the head of the Mod Squad. I like that.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about this, because you're taking tours, you're writing about it, you're in design. But for those of us who don't quite understand what is desert modernism, just kind of give us a refresher so we kind of get it. I know you're talking about steel and all of that, Michael, but just going back to how this even started in Palm Springs.
Well, we're very fortunate for being such a small city that we actually have a specific architectural style that evolved and was created here right after World War II. It's called desert modernism. And basically, it's modern architecture that's relating to the landscape, the sun and the desert. So our architectural style has 4 signature elements. So as you're driving around the city, you'll see these 4 elements over and over again. That's the cantilever. That's the unsupported roof section that extends out beyond the building's envelope. But you'll also see a band of clear story windows, which are these little windows right below the roof line. So it allows for sunlight to come in, but you also have privacy. Now, privacy is a really big factor here in our architecture. And a lot of first-time visitors, when they drive the streets, they look at these homes and there are no visible windows facing the street. And they think they must be very, foreboding and dark, but they're actually very wonderful to live in because they are transparent in the back. It's very private on the front, and then the back of the house is completely glass. It opens onto swimming pools, tennis courts, and of course, incredible views of the mountains. So this architectural style evolved with the idea of celebrating the landscape, but also providing privacy for the inhabitants. So we're very fortunate to have this desert modern architecture, and you see this throughout the city. And considering that we're a small city, we have such outstanding architecture, it's truly amazing.
Is it really one of the biggest collection in the world, like I was saying at the beginning?
I believe it is. There are some cities and such that have a collection. Now, Palm Springs was kind of the shall we say, the birthplace of this specific type of architecture. And this same type of architecture was also being built in Los Angeles and other parts of Southern California. But what really saved our architecture, I think more than anything, was the downturn of Palm Springs in the late 60s and 70s. Hollywood used to come out for years and years and years. But then in the late 60s, the whole studio system was changed. Actors were no longer under contract, which meant they didn't have to be within 100 miles of the studios. And so this is also the time of jet travel. So they could actually fly to Acapulco or Puerto Vallarta or Capri. And they started bypassing Palm Springs. They no longer had to be within that 100-mile radius. And as a resort community, basically used only in the winter, people didn't remodel and change houses. So these houses kind of, they just were stopped, and they were almost as if it was an amber. And that is our fortunate, it was serendipity that we survived through like 40 years without alterations. And then the city was being rediscovered in the mid-1990s, and the architecture was still original. So we were looking back at a time and realizing that we had original architecture that hadn't been remodeled. And that's what we're blessed with today.
And so isn't there Modernism Week that happens? I know when I lived in Tucson that we had Modernism Week as well.
Yeah, Modernism Week is a huge celebration. It happens in mid-February for 10 days. It starts next week. And the tickets go on sale November 1st. And there are upwards, I think this year, over 350 different events. So there are home tours, there are cocktail parties. I know Frank Sinatra's house is opened up and they have themed cocktail parties. There's symposia, lectures, movies, walking tours, design tours, you name it. There's it's a celebration of everything mid-century modern. And I should probably mention mid-century modern is really the boom years that followed World War II. So if you think about the baby boom, that's what mid-century is all about. It's the optimism and the building and celebration of a post-world opportunistic and optimistic view of the world. And that's what Palm Springs celebrates.
Okay, so if we're going to celebrate that time frame, what about does this happen during Modernism Week, or is it just something that can happen at any time, or we could have food and cocktails that go with that era? I mean, does that happen, Michael? I know you're the king of hospitality of Palm Springs. So is there food and drink that kind of complements that era?
Absolutely. Mid-century modernism is really celebrated year round. I mean, it's focused on Modernism Week in February and in their newer edition, which is in the fall. But we celebrate Modernism Week year round. I mean, Kurt will be the first to tell you, he has tours all the time. People are coming specifically to see the buildings, the architecture, but also to experience the food and drink. Just like we have a huge number of small hotels in Palm Springs, we also have a large number of owner-operated restaurants and retailers. And many of those reflect the mid-century modern style and the mid-century modern feel, if you will, which includes tiki. So we have a number of...
yay!
We have a number of tiki-focused organizations, restaurants, and retailers in town to reflect that piece of what we do.
Oh my gosh. See, before we started recording, I said, I want a margarita. Because as soon as I think of Palm Springs and being back in the desert, right now I need one. It's still winter where we are today. And I was like, oh, I need a margarita. I want sunshine. I want to come out. And now I'm thinking martinis already, but please we don't have to have the aspic thing, right? That wobbly jelly stuff, right?
Yeah.
We don't want that. That doesn't exist anymore.
Aspic and Jello molds, you can count on the fact that unless you want them, they're not there.
I don't want them. Kurt, tell us a little bit about your tours, because I just want to go with the Mod Squad anyway. That just sounds so much fun.
Well, that's fortunate because we do run tours year round, not just during Modernism Week. I work 7 days a week sometimes, and I have 3 different kind of daily tours that I offer. There's the interior tour, where you get to go inside 3 mid-century homes, so you get to see what it's like to live a modern life in mid-century architecture. And I have, I think right at last count, about 7 different homes that I have a relationship with the owners, and we go in and tour through the home every morning. And then we also have what's called the Essential Tour. That's the foundational tour, where it's all these tours are taking place in a minivan, so they're intimate tours, 5 to 6 people max. So you get a real personalized tour of Palm Springs. Now, the Essential Tour is 90 minutes, and we drive through the city, and you learn all about the architecture, the 4 elements, the 6 local architects who brought this desert modern aesthetic. There's a little bit of celebrity involved, but it's an architecturally focused tour. And then I also do a martini tour. This is my Rat Pack tour.
Okay, I knew we were going to get there. Yay, thank you.
Yeah. So the Rat Pack tour, or the Martini and Mid-Century Architecture tour, that's an hour-long tour where we go out and see the architecture of the houses of Frank Sinatra, Marilyn Monroe, Peter Lawford and the Rat Pack, and Dean Martin. And then we go and have a martini. And then I regale you with all my gin and martini knowledge, the history of the martini, the history of gin, why vodka martinis overtook gin martinis. And we end up having, I like to call it a think and drink. So there's a little architectural tour, and then also a little cocktail afterwards.
Okay, I want on the bus. I want on in the van. I love this. Before I have some questions for Kathy, but just going back to about how the designers were working with the elements. Frank Lloyd Wright was kind of like that, wasn't he? Where he was like looking and working with nature. So these were everybody coming like after him, or did he inspire any of the designers, do you think, in regards to looking at the landscape and then designing with that in mind? What do you think?
Do you want me to answer that?
Or? Yeah, Kurt. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I thought you were talking to Kathy. No. Actually, there are no Frank Lloyd Wright buildings in Palm Springs. There is one by his son Lloyd Wright, which is kind of a Mayan tower. But the idea of the cantilever, which is the protective awning on the buildings to protect the glass, the architecture. The mid-century architecture came right after World War II. So Frank Lloyd Wright was kind of ending his career by the late 1950s. So this is a little bit after him. And these were would have been younger architects. Richard Neutra, who has 2 homes that he designed out here, actually worked for Frank Lloyd Wright. And so there was this whole school of Southern California architecture is a little bit different than, let's say, the Midwestern prairie style that Frank Lloyd Wright had. But there are some certain elements. Our architecture tends to be more pavilion-like, with very thin roof lines and walls of glass and very delicate post and beam construction. So they're like these very thin, delicate buildings set in this dramatic landscape. And I'm looking at the San Jacinto Mountains behind you, which this is what I'm looking at today as well. So we have these impossibly blue skies, we have this incredible landscape, and then this incredible architecture to top it off.
So Kathy, tell us a little bit about some of your favorite buildings. Desert modernism buildings. That's so much easier to say.
I was just thinking, one of the things that I think it's important for people to know and understand what an incredible airport we have. I just flew in the other night, and when you come into the gate, then you take an escalator, and I was freezing to death in Bend, Oregon, and I came down the escalator.
Oh my gosh, I've been there.
70 degrees when I arrived, so it was pretty incredible. But I think it's also important to point out that we have now about 13 direct flights from cities into Palm Springs. So the airport is getting incredibly well known for its architecture. And I had the wonderful opportunity to visit with the son, the developer of it. Kurt, who was the artist the architect who built the airport?
And that was Donald Wexler, 1964,
Yeah.
and it's a historical, it's a Class 1 historical building, so it's a protected building.
And so what happened, I was recently at a dinner party and I met his son and had a great conversation with him. And his brother is working with the city to really try to bring back the airport to where it was originally. And so we're all very, very excited about that piece of it. So, and also I've got to say the Architectural Museum, which was the former bank downtown, is always kind of it's fun to take people there because they even have the drive-in window incorporated as part of the decor of the inside. And people are missing that because they have incredible exhibits that are rotating. And also the gift shop is fabulous if you want to buy some modernism gift ideas. They exist. But I also want to go back, Lisa, to the cocktails. Let's go back to cocktails. And the whole
wait, real quick, real quick, going back to the airport, because I think this is an important thing about I always think airports are important for people to understand, but I remember when I used to live in Borrego Springs and people would come fly in just to go have a cocktail at the airport and then the other one would fly home. One would drink and one would fly. So do you have people flying in their little, I was not their biplanes, but those little ones.
Actually, the private airport is on the other side of the airport. There's a private where the private jets come in. So the private jets really do not come into the one that literally is located downtown. And I think it's also something that we need to point out that, the valley is 35 miles long, Coachella Valley, and when you fly into Palm Springs, people say we're coming to Palm Springs. They fly in, and literally to go to most of our small hotels, it takes 5 or 10 minutes to get to your hotel from the airport. So that's a pretty unusual function of any kind of airport being that close to all of our wonderful hotels.
Okay, and when they get off the plane, like you're saying, going from Bend, Oregon, listen, I know that area, and it I feel like I'm there now. But when it's like when you hit the airport, I've done this where I've gone from England to Africa, and all of a sudden you're doing a strip tease all across the airport and getting outside. It's like all the layers are coming off, and here I am. I'm in sunny Palm Springs and happy, and then you get to your hotel and it's time for a cocktail. Yeah.
Well, and I also want to point out about the artwork at the airport. The artwork, I had the wonderful pleasure of writing an article for our Small Hotels blog site, and I, encourage people to go there to read about the artwork that is on the airport grounds from the minute you walk in to on your way to the various terminals. There's beautiful art, and upon my research, I discovered much of it are internationally known artists. So if you want to learn about it, again, read the blog about it, but at the same token, keep your eyes open to see the sheep that's there. And as you walk out from the baggage area, there's incredible pieces of art. And I'm finding out that people are not noticing that. So next time you come into town, Lisa, look around at the art here.
Oh, that's my whole thing is public art. I love it. And I think that really goes, I think architecture is part of the world of public art. Like, what you get to see and experience, you just have to keep it and preserve it, which obviously Palm Springs is really doing a good job in. So Kathy, your cocktails, you wanted to go. I'm not going to not let you say anything about cocktails, not on this show.
Well, I think this is a fun assignment. Then I'm assignment with another man, Gregory, to go find the gayest cocktail for Palm Springs. And my job is to find the best bourbon, old fashioned. And we are going to our small hotels that have, bars and things and checking it out. So that'll be another new article somebody can read about in the near future, because some of our hotels have wonderful restaurants connected to them and others do not.
Oh, I love the idea of going for the best cocktails, and listen. So Michael, come on, any pointers here for cocktails?
Well, there are lots.
You've got to have a triangle cocktail. You need a triangle. Do you have one? I shouldn't say you need one. You might have one.
No, we actually don't, but there are just plenty of places to go and have a great cocktail in Palm Springs. The afternoon cocktail is a standard in Palm Springs. And of course, Frank Sinatra actually raised a flag at his home when it was cocktail hour in the afternoon. So we have quite a history of cocktail hour in Palm Springs, and you'll find lots of people who celebrate it throughout town.
It's funny because I was just reading a quote about Dean Martin, and I can't remember which actor it was, and it was, they just celebrated a birthday. And he said, you want to know if Dean Martin really drank? Well, if a vampire bit his neck, he'd get a Bloody Mary. so I was thinking, I never, there's still that question. He wasn't really, oh, well, maybe he did. I don't know. But as Dean Martin, do you have any places that, as part of the Rat Pack, of Dean Martin being in Palm Springs on your tour, Kurt?
Oh, yes, of course. The Rat Pack was very well known. They would actually chopper in from Vegas. And there was this, unfortunately, it no longer exists, but it was called the Doll's House. And it was up on North Palm Canyon. And this place was so rollicking that the bar stools had seat belts. So you could be rip-roaring drunk and not fall off your bar stool.
Way.
And so the Rat Pack, they would certainly celebrate there. But we, on my architectural tours and the Martini tours, we go by their houses. So all the Rat Pack, I believe 3 of the 4 Rat Packers had houses in Palm Springs. One of them, I think, was in Rancho Mirage. So, but they all had places out here in the desert. And there's such a history of Hollywood that, this basically became the playground or the sandbox, as it was referred to, for Hollywood. So that, being within the 100 miles of the studio, that's why all the celebrities had houses here. And they would come out to relax. They didn't have to put on their Hollywood persona. So it's a very private city, and it's built for entertaining. At last count, we had, it was 45,935 residences, full-time residents, and we have over 40,000 swimming pools. So basically, everybody has their own private resort in their backyard.
Wow, that's amazing. So, all right, in closing here, you've got people knocking on your door saying, I'm coming to Palm Springs, the surprise drop-in people. None of us really want the drop-in. So that's why we have hotels. And that's because then they feel like they're in somebody cozy, they're having an authentic experience. So let's go to each of you. If you had, a family or friend just drop in, where is okay, this is a hotel for you. So let's do an example of a desert modernism hotel. And where are you going to go eat and drink and then say, okay, we'll see you tomorrow. I got things to do. I'm so nice. But the surprise drop-in. So let's start with you, Kathy. You've got a surprise drop-in. Who's coming and where are you sending them to stay and where are you going to eat and drink and be merry? We should just call this a happy hour show, Yeah,
that actually is. That is quite a question, especially since that where they are. But the Alcazar actually is a wonderful place to go. Food's available there. Sit out under the nighttime sky. I probably would go there, which is absolutely walkable, from any place downtown where you can join the happy hours if you want to. So that probably would be where I would head with somebody at this point. And I have to say, the other one, frankly, people forget about is Tropicale. And, their reef bar is totally fun. Back to what Michael was saying, that's the tiki atmosphere ultimate.
Oh man, I love that. It's so much fun. So where would you put them up for the night? In what hotel? And they must be a boutique inn that is part of the Palm Springs small hotel,
absolutely.
Small hotels.
Well, actually, since I said Cole, that would be one of them. I absolutely would do that. You're really asking a tough question on that because they're all.
I know there's over 70 of them.
Yeah, and it depends on what the personality of the folks are when they come in, and so I match them very differently. Blanking on an answer right at the moment.
Okay, well, just think of a good friend coming in, and where you would put them. But let's go to you, Kurt. Okay,
actually, I actually do have one. Aldelusa would be a really nice one where they have their hot tubs right outside the room underneath the night sky, and it's right behind downtown. And then, frankly, the other one who are luxury people would be a Min Casa, which used to be Gloria Swanson's house. It's a phenomenal place to stay.
Mm. Wow. All right. She's got a lot of friends coming, apparently. She went from 0 to, okay, we're doing all of them now. So Kurt, what about you? You've got the surprise drop in.
Well, I have personal experience of this because before we moved out here, we've had several homes, but while I was working on remodeling the houses, I would stay with Michael at the Triangle Inn. Cool. And that's a wonderful hotel. It's on the south end of town, which was very convenient for me because it was only just a couple blocks away from our home that I was working on. And I have many fond memories of happy hour around the pool there, meeting incredible people with the margarita. So definitely the Triangle Inn. There are so many beautiful little hotels with Palms. A lot of these small hotels were actually apartment motels. And this was a specific type of hospitality because you wouldn't come down to Palm Springs for a 3-day weekend in the 50s. It was difficult to get here and expensive. So you would come down for at least a month or two. And these little hotels were owned and operated by usually a husband and wife, and they lived on premises and then rented like studio or 1-bedroom apartments. So these small hotels are actually miniature small apartments. I think some of them have been converted into condominiums, but a lot of them have been converted into hotels. So you get that whole experience of your basically your own apartment. So and Herbert Burns was another architect who did a lot of small hotels like the Orbit Inn, the Hideaway, the 440, the 550, Holiday House. I think Desert Hills, there's like a street that's filled with these small hotels that he had done. He did the Desert Riviera. So that's certainly a specific type of experience, I think, that you can only find in Palm Springs. Because this was a seasonal location, the hospitality is a little bit different because you would come out and actually live in one of these apartments for a month or two. And then, of course, for drinks and dinner, if you wanted an old school experience, like the classic martini or the Vesper, the drink of James Bond, there's Melvin's. This is a hangout for Frank Sinatra.
Oh, so, yes, that's right.
They have the classic there. But if you wanted kind of a newer version of the Vesper, there's a speakeasy called Seymour's, which I think is fabulous. And they do a kind of a new version of the Vesper that I really like. And then the restaurant scene here in Palm Springs has really turned the corner. The last few years, incredible restaurants have appeared. And one that just comes to mind, we were just there recently and really, really enjoyed it, is Sandfish. And it's basically sushi and Japanese whiskey. So it's an interesting combination. Ooh. And so you can sample these different Japanese whiskeys, but also then have a wide variety of very innovative sushi and hand rolls and California style rolls as well. So that's just a couple ideas if you're interested.
I love the speakeasy part of it too, you know, because you know, and they all kind of started around Prohibition, right? Because that was rude. That was one of the rudest things ever, but the mafia made well off. They did good. I think they enjoyed Prohibition. But, you know, Michael, I want to go to you because, you know, Kurt was talking about, you know, coming in for a season. It was a seasonal town. I don't know if it's just me from when we used to live out in the Joshua Tree area, but I always I know people think about summer being warm in the desert. I will do anything for sunshine and warmth. Seriously, I will. But I always thought it was year round to me personally. So what is Palm Springs like now in regards to people coming to visit? Is it year round or is it only winter? What's it like?
You know, it's become a much more year-round destination. I mean, you have to remember that in the 30s and the 40s and the 50s, people didn't have air conditioning. So, and
Okay,
air
yeah.
conditioning was just starting to be widely available. So that's why it was really seasonal, because there weren't necessarily places to go and get a respite from the heat back then. But now everybody has a swimming pool, everybody has air conditioning, and all you have to do is just step inside somewhere and relax. And that has made it a year-round destination.
So
Sorry.
That's cool. No, I'm just saying that's really cool to have it year round, because there's that side of us that all want to go outside and bake in the poolside too. We want to bake and sip and bake, go back in the pool, then bake and sip again, right? That's what we want. I love that. So year round, everyone. So we've got Modernism Week coming up right now, but then you said that Michael, you touched on that in the fall, there's another kind of emergence of a Modernism Week as well.
Yes, in October.
Yeah, they Modernism Week started. They began calling it a preview weekend, but it's already expanded just because it's been so popular, so that it's becoming an entire fall Modernism Week all by itself.
Okay, that's awesome. That's really awesome. So, not letting you off the hook. What are you doing with the pop-up guest? What happens if you don't have any rooms at the inn? What do you do?
Well, gosh, that's an easy question.
You send them to the website?
Exactly. Well,
okay.
It's AuthenticPalmSprings.com does have all of the hotels listed.
Yes.
Okay, there you go. Well done. So where would you recommend for someone to stay, especially one that is modern, modern like yours?
Gosh, one of my favorite modern hotels is the Del Marcos. And the Del Marcos, it was, I think it was 47, wasn't it, Kurt?
Yeah, William Cody.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful, very fun, funky mid-century modern hotel. So I think for somebody who loves that style, it's a perfect place if you're not staying at my hotel.
You have to go to Michael's first. The Triangle Inn, everybody. The Triangle Dash Inn. You got to dash in and then never leave, right? Yeah. So and then
I'm sorry, we
ahead.
have so many others. I mean, we even have our own Hotel California out here. So, and that's a small mid-century. Well, I'd say it's another small boutique hotel, but there are just a variety of different styles of hotels and different vibes that people look for when they're staying somewhere. And I think we reach all of them with the Palm Springs preferred small hotels.
That's awesome. So what's happening for happy hour?
For happy hour, well, for our LGBTQ visitors, there's an entire street, Arenas Road, that gives you a wide variety of choices for happy hour. But there's also just a plethora of places right on Palm Canyon Drive. So you can sit on world famous Palm Canyon Drive and enjoy your cocktail right out front.
Oh.
Lisa, I wanted to add to that because there are retail stores are all within walking distance of many of these preferred small hotels. And I absolutely agree with Michael. Just start shopping in the afternoon at our great retail stores and then stop in at any of these places for happy hour because they're so close to your hotels.
That's right. I mean, from what I remember of Palm Springs, you could do some serious damage. And after that, you need a cocktail after you do all the retail. It's like, oh, I did all that. Well, I better just drink it off. And then, then I'll jump in the pool after. But no, I'm just kidding. But really, Palm Springs, everyone, I want to give the website for the hotels. Go to AuthenticPalmSprings.com. And on social media, if you go to AuthenticPalmSprings.com, that's also where you can connect with the blog and read Kathy's articles there and sign up for the newsletter. That's one of the best ways too. And also follow on social media. The handle is Palm Springs Stay. So Palm Springs Stay is that for Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, all those places. But let's go around and give everyone their website out again. So Michael, again, is triangle-in.com, right? Have I got that right? I think I gave you the triangle because I thought you were the one and only Triangle Inn. So it's triangle-in.com. Kurt, your psmodsquad.com. Have I got that right?
Yes.
Okay, and then Kathy, everyone needs to know about Palm Springs Insider Guide.com. Is that right?
Correct. Absolutely.
well, that means I get a martini now, and maybe a margarita
Yes.
first. And no, you can't do two. That's not a good idea. But a martini, I feel like that. So really, we went from gin to vodka. What was the reason, Kurt? I'm dying to know that.
Well, gin is very old alcohol. It's been around for hundreds and hundreds of years. Vodka was only just introduced to the States during World War II. And it was the Polish and the Russian soldiers that introduced vodka to the American GIs. And it was in the early 1950s when vodka was first introduced to the United States. And within 10 years, by the mid 60s, it had become the preferred alcohol. It had surpassed gin, bourbon, you name it. And so it was, if you ever go to a pre-prohibition bar, chances are you won't find vodka because it didn't make it to the States until after World War II.
I always wondered, because when we lived in Kenya and South Africa and England, gin and tonics were like, and gin martini, that was like a staple. That was
was actually brought to the UK, to England, after the 7 Years' War, and it was called Genever, which is basically juniper, and they would grind juniper and put it in into alcohol and give it to the soldiers as medicine, because they thought juniper had medicinal purposes, and that's what's called Dutch courage. And this whole Genever gin drinking really took off, and that's what it evolved into what we know as gin today.
I had no idea, but I have had sloe gin in Guernsey in the Channel Islands.
That's a whole different gin.
They did the juniper and the sloe, the berries, and they said, "Oh, just have a sip of that." And we were going to a bonfire night or something. And by the time I walked back to where we were, anyway, I was happy. I was a happy young lady at that point.
Sloe gin's a whole other animal.
Woo! I just thought it was like a local little thing. And then I was like, oh, okay. All right. On that note, thank you so much, everyone. It's been a blast having you on the show. We can't wait to see you in person when we get to Palm Springs. And everyone, again, AuthenticPalmSprings.com is a website. We are here every second Saturday talking about Palm Springs, and Sunshine stays here. And you can keep up with us at BigBlendRadio.com. Thank you all.
Thank you.